I am beyond elated, actually, to be able to have my very special guest here with us today.
This is that everyone in the organization believes our job is to grow regularly through learning from others.
Or we see the things that they're doing, or we see that we're losing to that company each and every time.
Go downstream and try to understand, who do you serve? Not who do you sell to, who do you serve?
The Modern Selling Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast. I am elated. I am beyond elated, actually, to be able to have my very special guest here with us today. You may have heard of him. If you haven't, I don't know where you've been, but Mr. Don Yaeger. Don Yaeger actually is extremely well known in the industry among speakers, has had an amazing career. You may have known him from being one of the associate editors at the Sports Illustrated. He's been following sports teams all over the world, and now as the president and founder of Greatness Inc., he is a keynote speaker, taking the time to talk to great sales teams like ours and yours all around how to build greatness. Mr. Don Yaeger, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Mario. I love the energy. It's all good.
Oh, fantastic. Well, one day you'll be able to take that little clip and use that as your introduction every time you walk on stage.
But I won't need Shaquille O'Neal or Oprah anymore. I've got you.
You got that right, man. You got that right. Oprah, get out of the way. What you got?
Right.
Well, Don, do me a favor. I obviously gave a background about yourself. You've had an amazing career, and I saw you speak at one of our enterprise customers where both of us were actually speaking. And I said, I got to have Mr. Yaeger on the Modern Selling Podcast. We've got sales leaders from CSOs, CROs, VPs of sales. We've got sales folks. We've got enablement folks, marketing leaders. We've got individual business owners as well that listen into the Modern Selling Podcast. And so do me a favor. I obviously gave you a background about yourself, but talk a little bit about yourself, what you're doing today, and a little bit about your background. Then I got a very special question for you.
Yeah, no problem. I'm a longtime journalist. I, have spent my career working for some big newspapers. Then I went to Sports Illustrated for a long time. Retired from there a few years ago. I decided to continue to write books. I've now written my 40th book. Came out last fall. I've got another new book that comes out in May on the science of momentum, which is really exciting. And in the middle of all that, I do about 65 keynote speeches. Had the good fortune of being inducted into the Hall of Fame of the Professional Speakers, National Speakers Association last fall. And then I do a podcast like yours. I try to interview people that I can learn from and share that wisdom with other people. It's called the Corporate Competitor Podcast. And between those ways of growing myself every day, I am my life is full.
Well, your books far outweigh anything that I have seen on a guest here. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, is it 12 times New York Times bestseller? Is that right? Out of the 40?
12 of my books. Yeah, my son will point out that I had 28 failures. Although you might not argue that, but that's okay. It's what a teenage son is supposed to do, is humble you a little bit. And so yes, 12 of the 40 are New York Times bestsellers, which is a number that I would never have imagined in my life I would achieve. And frankly, it's crazy. So.
Well, to be fair, while our teenage sons, I have one as well, about to turn 15, might point out and create a little bit of humility. To be fair, when you have 0 versus 12, it's still a big number for me.
No, it's so crazy. I mean, literally, I'll never forget when I got my first one. I thought that would be really cool to actually be able to call myself a New York Times bestselling author, and then to have it happen an additional 11 times is really incredible. So.
That's fantastic. Well, congratulations on your success. And I always ask a question with all my podcast guests, and that is, tell us something nobody knows about you, even if they're looking at any or all of your social profiles.
Well, a few people know this, but not many. When I was a teenager, I was the son of a preacher. My dad was a preacher, and I myself and the other pastor's son got arrested at the Billy Graham Crusade in Indianapolis, Indiana. We were in the garage stealing hubcaps off cars at the Billy Graham Crusade, and spent a night in jail. And it's one of those moments that, yeah, you look back on today and laugh, and you look back on then and you go, oh my gosh, did I really do that? So yes, crazy. Not typically in my bio.
I love it. Thanks for sharing that. That's a good one, actually. I haven't had the privilege of having an arrest, but it's something that I thought, every single time I went to go do something, should I do it? In fact, funny story. My youngest, he's 11, and he's a jokester. He's a prankster. He loves, jumping out from behind the walls and, trying to scare everybody, and wants to give everybody a heart attack. And he loves just jokes. And, he'll shake your hand with one of those zappers that, you shake a hand with. Or, not too long ago, he gave me a jelly bean. And I had a feeling that it was going to be one of those jelly beans that taste like dog food or something like that. Exactly. So I went to go put it in my mouth. I was like, no. I know better than this. So last night he was begging me, Dad, please, let's do a prank call. Let's do a prank call on somebody. So somehow he takes his mom's phone and he calls up. I don't know where he called, what restaurant he calls. And he calls and does some sort of prank call. And I said, what are you doing? Did you hit star 67 to block caller ID? He's like, what's that? And I'm like, oh my God.
You're stolen. Exactly.
I said, you can't do that. And my wife found out and she goes, you used my phone? So we'll see what happens with his jokes there. But let's get into some great content here, Don, while we've got you. One of the things that I heard when you were speaking at one of our joint customers' sales kickoff this past year was really on the topic of what makes great teams great. It was such a fantastic keynote that you gave. And that's one of the reasons why I asked you to be on the Modern Selling podcast, right? We're in our 9th season, the top 1.5% of all podcasts globally. It's been fun and an amazing privilege, but we don't oftentimes talk about how to achieve greatness. And so I want you to just take us through some talking points on, I'm going to open up a super broad question. When you think of great teams, what teams come to mind and what made them great?
Well, for me, there's a lot of teams that I ultimately decided to study. Nick Saban's Alabama football team, the North Carolina women's soccer team that's won 21 national championships, the mid 90s Chicago Bulls. You start adding some of these teams up and they're fantastic, but there was something that allowed them to be great year in and year out. It's one thing to have a fantastic season. It's another thing to be a fantastic organization. And then I followed it up by chasing down great businesses that were continuously outperforming the metric. Delta Airlines, Chick-fil-A, looking at some of the big businesses that have regularly been best in class. And so as I've tried to study these organizations, I'm always trying to look and figure out, what are they doing differently? What are the ways that they see the world that others are missing? And I went on that journey for about a decade. Ultimately wrote a book that's on the video screen right behind me, at Great Teams. And what I discovered, there was about 16 things that I would argue the best teams did differently. And it's everything from not having a mentoring program, which a lot of organizations do. They have a mentoring culture. It's where, everyone believes. This isn't about checking a box that I met with my mentor this week. This is that everyone in the organization believes our job is to grow regularly through learning from others. And we are not intimidated by the opportunity to teach someone else. There are a lot of places where mentoring stalls because they're worried that if I teach you all of the things I know, how much longer will they need me? And that if you have a great culture, that's not the way people approach it. But the most important one, the number one answer to that question, was that the best teams didn't just know their why, didn't just know their sense of purpose. the best teams felt their why. They felt they had a belief that they were, in fact, in they were part of something bigger than themselves. And we love to use that phrase, right? It's an awesome phrase. I want to be part of something bigger than me. But what does that mean? Well, the great teams show you what it means.
Appreciate that. Yeah, one of the things that I remember as well, when you were talking last, you gave an illustration about the basketball Olympic team, and you talked about how you know, excuse me, that you've built a really great team when your opponent admires you. And you even gave an illustration about how the opponents were taking pictures with, in this case, I think it was the dream team.
The dream
And I think about this. I think about this in the line of business. When we look at our competition as a company, and we see that there is a company that we aspire to be like, or we see the things that they're doing, or we see that we're losing to that company each and every time, that's probably one of the areas there that we look at and say, gosh, they built a really great, whether it's be product, team, organization, culture, you fill in the blank, or maybe it's all of the above. Take us back to this topic around that, how you've achieved greatness when the opponents are actually looking at you saying, hey, they become your fans.
Right. Well, I mean, we know it, right? There, in most of our industries, there are companies you want to work for, right? There are companies that I know. I mean, I remember when I was a journalist, I aspired to write for Sports Illustrated because at the time it was the greatest product in the industry that I aspired to grow into. So if that's your so I didn't work for Sports Illustrated, but I would take pictures of them, right? I aspired to be on their team. Look at your organization and ask yourself that question. Am I the team others want to join? Am I the team that people are working to figure out how do I get to that team? Or am I the team that's losing people to someone else because ultimately I'm not the team they want to work for? And that'll tell you, are you the great team or are you the pretender?
And let's talk about complacency.
Hmm.
So many orgs do this when they're top performing or they're at their peaks. They get complacent.
They stop doing the very things that got them there.
Why? What happens?
Human nature. It's human nature. Human nature says that that I've done what it took to get here. I want to just give me a break. Let me enjoy this for a while. Let me stop. Let me breathe. Let me bask. Right? As one great coach told me, he said, most people want to sleep in their trophy room, right? They want to lay down with their trophies and appreciate all that they've done. But while they're doing that, somebody's catching up. So how quickly can you wake up is the big question.
I want to tell a story, and it happened just this past week. So I created a private basketball league for my sons. We have ages 10 to 18 years old. My oldest, he's about to be 15. My youngest, he's 11. And we've got about 90 kids in the basketball league. And every week we change up the teams and the coaches to give variety for the kids to be able to learn how to get different coaching styles, different tips and techniques. But every week we play a series of anywhere between 4 and 8 games, depending on the number of kids that show up each week. And then we have a playoff game at the end, which is the top, 2 winning teams in each of the leagues, the 10 to 13 and the 14 to 18. And for about 3 weeks in a row, my oldest, he was on a losing team, and he was frustrated. So much so that on the 3rd week, a few of the coaches and dads and 2 of his own teammates come up to me and said, yeah, your son, he's got a real attitude problem right now. and he's struggling. And so they said, hey, hopefully you can work with him on that. So I brought it back to him. And then he said, at first everybody else was the problem. And so it took me like a whole week to get him to really think about success principles. And then he said, well, would you coach my team this week? So I said, okay. So this past weekend, I decided to coach the team. I am the loudest one out of all of our 16 coaches that we've got. And every player heard what I was telling them to do on the basketball court. Go here, go there, go, break this, left, right. We ended up winning this past week, the playoff game. So I asked him a very simple question. I said, take a look at the level of success that we just achieved. What clues or what things did you see happen that precipitated success? You talked about something about basic principles of success. Is that success leaves clues?
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about that particular element right there, please, Don.
Well, what it means is that if you want to be better, if you want to be greater at the opportunity, what you should be doing, rather than trying to craft a plan, here's what I'm going to do to be great. Go out and study others who are successful and see what they can teach you. See what in the study you can learn. Because I do believe success leaves clues, and they're available to us if we're willing to go out there and find them. And it's a whole lot less time consuming, whole lot less expensive to go study someone else's success and failures and learn from them than to go out and create your own. So the ability to go study success should be a driving force for all of us.
I love that answer. And my son, when I asked him that very question, I said, what was different? And I appreciate he said this. I don't necessarily know if I can take all the credit for it, because there was something that he missed. And he said, oh, it was the coach. Now, I appreciate that because I was the coach that week, right? And I said, well, let's talk a little bit about that. He was like, you were calling the plays. You were letting everybody know where they needed to go. Everybody could hear you. Nobody else was louder. The other coaches were trying to talk, and you just overshadowed them with your, big booming voice. And so everybody knew what to do, when to do, where to do it. And I said, I appreciate you giving me the win there, but there was something more. And he was like, well, I don't know what. And I said, look, a coach can coach all day long, but it really comes down to the people that are on the court. Did they listen? Did they apply? Did they communicate? Did they work together as a team? Did they tell somebody you're screwing up? You're this, you're that, right? Did they bring team camaraderie? Did they build a culture on the team that wanted to make people be there and change the behaviors on the team? And he sat there and he looked and he thought about it. He was like, yeah, you're right. I guess. Yeah, everybody was listening. We were starting to talk on the court. We were high-fiving everyone. We were giving each other the kudos. And so I said, so really, yeah, maybe it was a little bit of the coaching, but it was about listening. It was about the behaviors, and it was about starting to form new habits, of which, what were you doing the 3 weeks prior?
Right.
I was angry. I was mad. I was telling everybody they sucked. I was telling everybody they did this. And so I think he got it. And that's some of the things that you talked about building a consistent formula of winning teams. Talk a little bit about that, please, Don.
Well, those winning teams understand that it's that there's an opportunity, and I mean, winning teams, they feed. It's funny how many winning teams you'll listen to at the end, and they'll talk about, well, we loved each other. Well, yeah, it's easy to love each other when you're winning, right? The challenge is loving each other when you're not. And so I think it's important to recognize that the idea of studying winning teams also means kind of setting aside some of the things that might be the typical phrases that are used whenever someone comes together to win, and trying to break into, how do I get there? Not that I loved each other because we won. Could I love you even if we're not? And it's the ability to create an environment where people recognize that that we're in this together, and that if we're going to be in it together, um, we're going to be in it together, both the success and the failure. And when failure happens, I'm not pointing a finger. When success happens, I'm not pointing a finger at me, right? It is about the collective, and the best teams are just better at making sure that culturally they recognize and they are fans of each other. When you're successful, I cheer for you. And I don't in any way feel as if your success is my loss. And there are plenty of places, sales organizations are famous for them, where if you go get a big deal and I've got to sit back and watch everybody celebrate you, internally, I'm like, that should have been my deal, right? And that ability to kind of get past that is where you start to find long-term excellence.
Uh, One of the things that I heard you say before was that in your studies of all these amazing, great sports teams, including the Olympic team, the basketball team, the dream team, as we called them, right? I think,
Right.
was it back in 1996?
1992.
1992. You talked about that teams are hyper-focused on culture,
Mhm.
which leads to behaviors, and then behaviors lead to something else.
Habits. And then the habits lead to success.
Talk about that.
So what happens is because you start with this culture, am I infusing the right people into the culture? Am I bringing people in who can cheer for each other? Am I bringing A dogs who are also willing to recognize other A dogs, right? If I'm doing that and they understand these are the non-negotiables of our organization. We respect each other. If you and the second you violate that, the second I catch you disrespecting another member of the team, you'll pay a price for it. And when the culture's strong, behaviors follow, right? If those things are real, ultimately what happens is people stop talking about each other, right? And when that happens, those behaviors after a short period of time become so habitual that we don't even think about talking about someone else, right? It's no longer a muzzle. It's a way of life. And the habits, it's when we create the right habits that what you find is sustained excellence. Sustained excellence is built on habits. It's not built on momentary changes of behavior. It's built on a bedrock of good behavior.
So do you think culture happens by design or default?
Oh, it happens by both, frankly.
Okay.
So if you're not intentionally building your culture, one will be built for you, but probably not in the way you want it to be built. So it happens either way. So if it's going to happen, you should make it happen by design.
And we use the word culture, especially in corporate business. Like what's the culture? What is culture? Define that. What does it include? Like values and what are the components of culture?
Culture is the behaviors that you will accept in your environment. And that doesn't sound overly exciting to say it that way, but that's exactly what it is. If we say, for example, and I think I used this one on the day that you and I were together, if we say that we start every meeting on time because we so respect everyone's, and it's a sign of respect to everyone in the room that we begin the meeting at the time we appoint it to begin, but everybody in the room knows we're going to start 6 minutes late because that's the way it always happens around here. By the way, your culture is not that you start on time. Your culture is that you start 6 minutes late. And so it's, what are you willing to accept? Hey, will I accept something different from you? Will I let you get away with a little more because you're the best salesperson in the room? Well, what does that say to everybody else, right? That means that the standard you've set doesn't really exist. It only exists for some and not for all. And so it's important that you establish culture then, and it's defined by what you will accept.
So another way to say it, I guess, could we say it's like the common language of a team or an organization?
Completely. It is. That's what it ultimately becomes. Common language of your team.
So one of the things I was talking to my son about is a big component is attitude.
Mhm.
And over the previous 3 weeks, at one point, he was so frustrated with the experience of, the different players on the team, of which, by the way, the coordinators, the league coordinators, which I'm one of, every week we go through and we try to balance all the teams as we create them, right? So that we can make sure they have consistent opportunity to be able to win. And that you hit the nail on the head when you've got, 3 out of 4 teams that are like 2-2 or like, 3-3, right? For the night.
So UBA, you want everybody to go to the middle, right?
Yes. At least give them a fighting shot. At least give them a fighting shot to work together. And so I talked a little bit about this with him, and I said, I want you to think about the attitude. The attitude is so important. What are you showing up with every single day? And interestingly enough, I said to him right before we went to go to game night over the weekend, I said, listen, we're going on 3 weekends in a row that I've heard this type of behavior. You and I spoke about this for the last week now. And what I need to see is that you are implementing a better attitude, because if you can't, I'm going to have to bench you for the next week or two. Right. And so this is going right back into, even in business, the common language that we speak, which is, this is the expectation. This is how we need to perform. And this is how I need you to show up every single time. But sometimes great teams go from great to not so great. And you talk about a story about how the Dream Team in 1992 went from, the best in class, the most desired team to ever play basketball. They went from best in class to, I think, 6th in the world, and then they fell.
Just in a decade, right? And literally, they fell apart because they stopped doing the things that made them so successful. So to the point we've shared multiple times, it just, it becomes, unfortunately, human nature does kick in, and people get we believe that we're going to win just because the ball is in our hands. And the truth is that, if you stop doing the little things, you'll fail. And so what happened was USA basketball fell apart. They landed 6th in the world championships, just a decade after being the best team of all time. And so their challenge became, how do you find your way back? And that was a responsibility they gave to Duke basketball coach Mike Krzyzewski, who stepped in as the new head coach for USA basketball, and he went to work on changing the culture. He wanted the players to believe they were, in fact, part of something bigger than themselves. He wanted them to realize they weren't playing basketball, they were playing for the United States of America. And when you can actually infuse your organization with this sense that they're not selling whatever it is they're selling, what they're doing is actually reshaping the lives of those they get a chance to serve. When they understand that there's a bigger purpose behind what they're doing, you get more. They show up differently, right? You get energy that's not required, and that's where success is found.
I think you define that as every great team needs to feel their why.
Needs to feel that sense of purpose, correct? And in USA basketball, the way Coach Krzyzewski did it was he started. He said, who could I introduce these players to, who also are wearing the letters USA on their jersey, but for a different reason? And so he started taking basketball players, the best players in the world, and asking them to come hang out with members of the United States Armed Forces. Young men and women wearing USA on their jersey for a different reason. And he wanted them to realize that those people were putting their lives at stake for the protection of these basketball players. They were putting their lives at stake for the protection of those basketball players' families. And he wanted them to realize, if you're going to don the same letters on your chest, show respect to who those people are. Honor them. through the way you will conduct yourself, the way you will play. And what came to be was this whole new impression the players had about the responsibility they had on the team. And they were no longer just playing basketball. They were representing the young men and women they were meeting out on the road, young men and women, who were serving the United States interests.
So is that to say that in business, what an individual does matters, and that we as leaders need to make sure that they understand that even if you're customer service, answering a phone call 8 hours out of the day, and people that are pissed off and angry, right? That what they are doing actually matters.
Completely. People show up differently when they believe what they're doing matters. And so the way you make this happen, let's use a business case example. One of the stories I told when you were in the room was a medical device company called Medtronic, right? Medtronic has tens of thousands of employees all over the country, all over the world. And not all of them are in product development or in product sales. Some of them are in administration, right? Some of them are in accounts receivable. And it's easy if you're in those roles just to think, I'm here today and I'm a widget. If I'm not here, somebody else replaces me. It's easy to kind of lose your sense of passion for your job if that's the way you see yourself. But what if you see yourself as part of a collective that is keeping people alive? And so the CEO of Medtronic, a guy named Bill George, used to bring in families that would speak to the employees of the organization, and the families would say, thank you, because what you do makes a difference. My father walked me down the aisle this summer in my wedding, right? I mean, they would look at the employees and say, thank you, because your device is everything you promised. My grandfather stands right here today when doctors predicted he wouldn't just a year ago. So the idea of bringing someone in front of your staff, bringing someone to them that is the customer you serve, not necessarily the customer you sell to. Because in Medtronic's case, they don't sell to families. They sell to hospitals. The families are who they serve. They bring who they serve in to talk to the employees, to say thank you. And that can be done in just about any organization. It does not matter what you do. Go downstream and try to understand, who do you serve? Not who do you sell to, who do you serve? Who does your good work make a difference to? And if you can wrap your arms around who those people are, what you come to realize is that you're in the business of shaping futures for other people. And if you are, now I show up differently, right? I'm not selling a medical device. I'm changing lives. And again, it's perspective. And we as leaders need to provide that perspective to our employees.
And I think, to be very clear, this is such an important point, because there are generations that I think it's millennials and is it Gen Z? Gen Z that they feel that in order for them to feel happy at work, that what they do actually matters, what the work that they do actually matters and makes impact. Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's a big deal in studies around employee engagement, is that what you find is that when employees believe that what they're doing matters and that they're actually making a difference to someone else, the world, the United, well, whatever it is, right? If they're making a difference to others, they have a different level of engagement, a different level of satisfaction that comes with their work. And we know what happens when engaged employees are on our team. We get better outcomes.
So the interesting, marketing always wants to create videos of customer impact and what your product or service did for that particular customer. But really, actually, human resources and leaders should be just as interested, because it helps to send the message back to the front lines on what they're doing really matters. I think that's what we're talking about too, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's really neat that groups build videos, but videos are only so good, right? Videos can be manufactured in some ways. A live person standing in front of a room saying thank you makes a huge difference.
No doubt about that. And would you say that to overcome, I think one of the major challenges that we see, and there's a lot of conversation around this in government, right? About whether or not employees are disengaged. How does an organization overcome employee disengagement?
Well, they do it through some of what we're talking about here. They begin to show the employees that that if they stay locked in, if they do the right thing, if good things come to be, that that they're responsible for making a difference to someone else. We all work differently when we believe what we're doing is going to change the outcome for someone else. It's just straight up, right? I mean, it's human nature. Again, we keep coming back to human nature. Human nature says that when I believe I'm making your life better, I feel better about me. And so, it is important that we articulate that we make that clear, and we make it available to those we're attempting to lead.
Don, we could sit here all day long talking more and more about this particular topic. I know we're coming up on time here, but if you were to sum up what makes great teams great, what would that sound like?
Well, I think what you'd say is that they're committed to things that average teams aren't, right? Great teams are committed to things that average teams aren't. And by that, I mean, from a leadership perspective, they're thinking about things like we're talking about right now. They're saying, how do I create an environment where my employees believe that they're locked into each other and that they're beholden to each other, that they're better because of each other? How do I convince them that the work we're doing actually changes the lives of other people? How do I convince them that the work that because they're with us, they're being treated differently and better. They're loved differently than they would be if they went down the street for $1 more. If I can convince them of all of those things, I get better employee engagement. If I get better engagement, I get better results. If I get better results, it shows up on the bottom line. But you have to start by doing the work. Everybody's focused on the bottom line. Sometimes you have to focus on the people that lead you to the bottom line.
Closing out my story about my son, one of the things I had him do that week when he found out who was going to be on his team, I said, what do you think you could do to be able to bring everybody together before you get on the court? And we started brainstorming, and he said, well, maybe I should just, get everybody in a group text and then start talking about, some of the strengths and weaknesses. And we can talk about, some of the different teams, because the kids get to see who's on the other team and figure out in advance, like, who's going to cover who. And I said, great, do it. And so at the end, once we won the playoff for this past weekend, I asked him, I said, what do you think you did that was great? And he said, I think planning ahead definitely helped us to be able to figure out, like, who was going to be on who. What we didn't plan for was one of the players on the team, one of the tallest players, he got sick. And so he had to step out. And so because we play only 5 to a team, the coaches have to fill in on the team. So here goes out of shape 48-year-old Mario that jumps in. And one of the players on the opposing team said, as I kept calling the calls and the plays, they didn't understand what we were saying until finally one guy picked up, and he was like, while we're in the game, he's like, guys, the coach is calling the plays. Listen to what he's saying. Just listen to what he's saying, and then you'll be able to defend. And we just kept them so rattled by calling out our different plays that they could not keep up. And so it was such a great opportunity for him to see that, sometimes it's not about just the moment in time. It's about the pre-planning, and it's about being actually in that moment as well. For my son. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I love it. That's so true. It's great.
At any rate, listen, if someone wants to get connected with you, Don, what's the best way? Is it connect on LinkedIn as an example?
Great. DonYaeger.com is my website. Corporate Competitor, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. It's a lot of letters, but it's pretty easy to spell. is another great way. So, but thank you, Mario. I really appreciated it.
And leaders, if you have not heard Don Yaeger speak, I mean, it was absolutely the highlight of the entire sales kickoff. Yes, even more of a highlight than my presentation. Man, I was so juiced over it. You did a wonderful job. Leaders, make sure you get Don there. It's very inspirational, especially talking about what makes great teams great. And Don, I got one final question for you, and that is your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
Wow, all-time favorite movie. So I'm a sports movie guy. I would go with Hoosiers. I love Gene Hackman, Hoosiers. The idea that amazing things are available if we come together. I love Hoosiers.
There it is. You've got his all-time favorite movie there, Modern Selling Nation. Hey, don't turn that dial quite yet. Listen to this very important message from our program sponsors right now. Imagine having the power to identify companies visiting your website, track their behavior in real time, and seamlessly integrate it all with your CRM. Leadfeeder is not just a tool, it's your secret weapon for efficient and targeted lead engagement. What sets Leadfeeder apart? It's the ability to provide detailed insights into visitor behavior, helping your sales team prioritize efforts and close deals faster. With customizable notifications and lead scoring, Leadfeeder is changing the game. Ready to revolutionize your approach to leads and deals? Head over to leadfeeder.com for your free demo today. That's LEADFEEDER.com. Leadfeeder.com. Don't miss out on the future of successful lead generation with Leadfeeder. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. Oh, and don't forget, if you'd like to save 20 hours or more in a month and increase your productivity, go right now and download Fly Message, that's flymsg.io, for free. It's your free text expander and personal writing assistant. Hey, thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.